Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go.
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod and our first after show for Andor. We'll be taking a look at the first couple episodes here, as many as we have time for today. So probably the first two, maybe we'll hit the third one. We'll see. But we have a very special guest, Kirk from Orbitkey, joining us on the show, as well as your very faithful co-host, Blake. And we're going to get into the nitty-gritty, the breakdown, and full spoilers ahead. For any of you guys who haven't seen the Andor premiere so far, I don't know what you're listening to us for. Get watching. Let's get into it.
Another happy landing.
What a very Blade Runner-y kind of intro there to the main title theme.
Yeah, that's a good point. It was very Blade Runner. Actually, I noticed that throughout the first three episodes, like with everything being gritty and then like the storms and the lights and everything, it felt very Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I like the serious tone as well.
Yeah, I know, Kirk, you love Blade Runner.
I love it, and it felt like I was in a whole new galaxy, no pun intended, but it was gritty, it was dark. I was enjoying the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's off to a very interesting start. I've already heard the odd person say it's either not for them or it's very slow, and then there's other people just raving out about it. Like, it just seems to be kind of the natural response to any Star Wars show.
Any Star Wars, yeah, there's always two extremes. There's never a lot of people in the middle. Or at least those people don't say anything.
Yeah, exactly. But here we are, and we're 3 episodes in, 3-episode launch, which was the most we've ever seen. In fact, this is the longest Star Wars show that's ever kind of debuted with live action. That is with 12 episodes to the first season. So we're going to be, watching that every Wednesday and talking about it every week, and it's going to be fun. But Kirk, welcome back to the podcast. It's been a little bit since a little hot minute since we had you on, and would you be able to just kind of like explain to our audience just like what new stuff that has come out since we last talked to you? I mean, I see this lovely, amazing desk mat in front of me right now, and it's fantastic. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's been a while since I was last on. I think it was just towards the end of the Kenobi show. So obviously a lot of awesome Star Wars stuff has happened since then with all the new announcements and obviously with Andor starting now. But I guess since back then, we just had the first 4 of our key organizers that were reminiscent of a few different Star Wars characters. That was a Grogu, Mando, Palpatine, and Boba Fett. And then since then, we dropped another couple key organizers inspired by Kenobi and Vader, which are personally my 2 favorites because I love the show and obviously the characters too. And then just shortly after that, following on your desk, Josh, as well as a lot of our desks around the world, we released the Star Wars desk mats, which were inspired by Kenobi and Vader. So yeah, like, it was a really great time for Orbitkey. Everyone is a massive fan of Star Wars here, so it was really amazing to design these desk mats and bring a few different things into the home as well that were Star Wars inspired. So yeah, feel free to check them out on orbitkey.com, especially if you're a Darth Vader or Obi-Wan and Kenobi fan, because that's what those new desk mats are inspired by.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, and I've got the Vader one sitting in front of me right now. It's fantastic. It's got the document stowaway underneath. It's got the little groove.
Yeah, that's the part that caught my eye, was like the stowaway part.
Yeah.
How often you see like it's almost like a hidden vault inside the mat.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you like it. I mean, because the desk mat is designed based off our original desk mat, and we like to do things a little bit differently and not just make kind of like a single bit of plane of material that kind of sits on your desk. We wanted to put in a few more different built-in organization features and stuff, like the magnetic toolbar on the top, and obviously add in a few Star Wars touches. I think we've got the Jedi logo on the Kenobi desk mat, and then there's the Imperial logo in the bottom right on the Darth Vader one, as well as a little quote on the inside of the desk mat for each of them when you pull up the top layer too. So I'm quite a messy person, and I'd like to put in all of my papers and stuff underneath. And just because it's Star Wars, I'm a little bit biased, but I have to say it makes it just a tad bit better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's a great. Right now on my desk, I don't have any papers, but I've already used it to put in that little character card that they all come with. They always come with this really cool. That and the keychain organizer, like they come with the character card with the write out on the back. And you said last time that you have a hand in making those write ups, right?
Yeah. I had the awesome opportunity to write all the descriptions of the characters for each of them. So all 6 characters. Obviously the first 4 I included, and Vader and Kenobi. And it was I really enjoyed doing it, and it was also a bit of a daunting task too, because I wanted to make sure I got nothing wrong, because those characters have so much legacy behind them.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of pressure, but I think it all worked out really well, and everyone's been loving them so far. And I love seeing people kind of transform their desk setups and put a bit of Star Wars flavor into them too, because that's what I'm passionate about.
Man.
So yeah,
you should see Josh's setup now. I saw it yesterday when we watched the launch for Andor, and he's got it was like 2 foot tall Anakin with a light up lightsaber over top of like the Darth Vader desk mat and everything. Everything's all light up, even his headphones and everything light up now. Like the fanciest. It looks like something that like an advertiser would have on YouTube.
It's well, it certainly added a nice Star Wars touch to the room. So I can thank you for that. And Blake's got the Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they look amazing. Awesome
and
materials.
I have to admit, I chuckle every time I lift up the corner for like the hidden space, and you just read the hello there.
Yeah.
Just every time I can hear Obi-Wan's voice in my head. Every
Hello
time
there.
I look at that corner.
Here's your bank statements.
Yeah, it's like he's hiding under the corner.
I mean, every time I answer a phone call now, or I jump on like into a meeting, that's exactly how I open up my sentence. So I was so happy to put that in there. So I'm glad you are too.
I couldn't think of anything else I'd want in there as far as Obi-Wan quotes.
Well, Darth Vader's quote sums up this product pretty well. Impressive, most impressive. So on that note, let's segue here into Andor. I mean, initial impressions. How do you guys like the first episode here?
I absolutely loved it. Like as I said before, I'm a massive Blade Runner fan, so I loved how deep and gritty it is. And I think Star Wars is like a space opera, and the big galaxy and everything. We've seen kind of the glossy side over the last 40 years of like what the big characters do. So it's really nice to kind of jump into the deep nitty gritty stuff of Star Wars. And obviously it's not beautiful. Like not everyone lives in the Jedi Temple and all that. So I was really enjoying it so far.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because other than some of the grittier moments in some movies, like Solo, we saw a bit more grit.
Tatooine, I feel like.
Other than Tatooine, and I feel like kind of the grittiest we normally get is like the underbelly of a cantina or something like that. But
or like maybe like the lower levels of Coruscant.
And Solo, I really loved the beginning of that movie on Corellia. Like I don't know, I'm kind of. I know there's a lot of people out there that kind of wanted different things from that film, but I couldn't get enough of it. I was like, wow, we get to see Corellia. The speeder chase was awesome. It's the only Lego set in recent history that I've bought from Star Wars, other than the Pod Racer release. And I was just like, man, I just love all this. Like the the ocean, the cranes, you know, the
Yeah.
shipbuilding, you know, it was just a really kind of cool to see an environment that just kind of resembled the port, I guess, you know, like, you know, we live in a city in which there's a lot of like import, export, you know, there's ports, cranes, you know, shipping boxes, whatever stuff being built. And it's like, yeah, it just kind of has this familiarity to it and this realism, like this grittiness to it. And Andor was kind of like giving us like a new lens on that, I guess. And, you know,
Well, it's funny, 'cause, like, I feel like a lot of the issue people had with the Solo movie is I feel like they wanted it to be more like this. Whereas like a lot more of a serious tone. And to be honest, with the opening shots, I thought it was Corellia until they had the title card come up.
That's funny.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can see that. And you know, thankfully, Rogue One kind of set something in motion with the name of the place that flashes up on screen, which is kind of the first thing that I want to talk about. Which you know, we open up episode 1. It's called Casa, which is I guess the native tongue name for Cassian. Cassian must be his kind of basic translated version of his name. And we open up on Morlana 1, which is a Preox Morlana corporate zone. And it actually uses...
very imperial.
I'm going to actually kind of break this down because I was kind of like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. And we also got like a date, BBY. Now, I want to talk about this. I have a small rant about this because BBY has always forever been an outside exterior way for fans to describe time. You know, so the events of Star Wars that take place, they use a different method of tracking time within that universe. Because prior to Battle of Yavin, which is what BBY stands for, you know, how did they track time, right? Like there was a different mechanism for the characters in that lore to know what year it is. So as fans, because Star Wars began for a lot of us with A New Hope, with 1977, that's the event, you know, that's Battle of Yavin. Then came the prequel. So it's like, oh yeah, we'll refer to that as before Battle of Yavin kind of thing. So it kind of became this thing that authors began to use to describe when their story takes place in the chronology of this giant, ever-expanding universe. And it's just
a lot
kind of
the
become a
books
thing.
would have a chart, right?
Yeah.
They'd have a chart of like how many BBY before or after that this book takes place.
Yeah, they'll have a timeline or something like that. So my small beef about this is Pablo made a huge stink about it a couple of years ago. As like, nope, that's not how they track time in the universe. That's not supposed to make sense to the characters in that world. It's only for us kind of thing. And they actually use
it would only make sense in the context of we're looking back in time at something.
Yeah. So I just thought to myself, okay, this is 100%. I'm okay with it, but it's just 100% fan servicing because it's the first time ever that we've seen it in a movie or in a show. And BBY, it's like, yeah, that's the way that the fans use to describe when these stories takes place. Okay, now it's very evident to me. This story takes place 5 years before A New Hope takes place. Cool. All right. You know, there was no need for dialogue to describe when it takes place. There was no need for anything else. It's like, all right, just put on the screen. All right, everyone knows kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I guess for the characters, obviously, like it's impossible for them to know that 5 BBY is a thing because they don't know when, obviously, the Battle of Yavin like occurs.
Yeah.
But for me, it's almost like, and kind of tying in with how gritty the nature of this show is, it almost kind of feels like I'm watching a real life documentary of past events. Like that's what it kind of feels like almost. Yeah, and that's why like I'm really enjoying it so far as well. But I like obviously I think it is a big fan service thing too, that putting the title up there, and I was a little bit surprised when I saw it.
Yeah.
I think they just didn't know what else to do. Especially now that the shows are jumping all over the place, they need something to say when it is. How many people watch Mandalorian and thought that it was a prequel to the prequels?
A lot of
it's
people.
actually Yoda.
A lot of overly casual viewers did think that. Yeah. But no, I totally get it. If they didn't do it though, someone would have to drop the line of like, "Oh, it's been 15 years since the end of the Clone Wars," or like something like that, right? And then it's like, that kind of feels a little forced. But I'm fine with this. I'm fine with this initiative of just pasting the year up there, just for the sake of this show specifically, we're dealing with a ton of flashbacks, like all the time. There's just flashback, kind of filling us in on Andor's or Cass's young kind of growing up years on his home world and how he was kind of taken off. We're going to get into all that stuff. But it was kind of just worth bringing that up at some point. Corporate sector. So Preox Morlana corporate zone may or may not be part of corporate sector. Corporate sector is this thing that's shown up in Star Wars before. It's essentially it's a sector located in like the Outer Rim, and it's governed by an independent corporate sector authority. And so it's like not run by any particular faction, but it does have kind of loose ties to whoever is kind of in charge of the galaxy. Most recently, we had a bit of a cameo from this corporate sector authority in the Shadows of the Sith novel that we just finished reading. And it was mentioned that, what's his name? Governor Pride, or Grand Moff Pride or something, used to work for that division. I got confused when I was trying to figure out whether or not that this Preox Morlana corporate zone is a system that kind of falls under the jurisdiction of this corporate sector, right? So I kind of did some research, and it doesn't. So the Preox Morlana, also known as Pre-Mor Authority, like the governing kind of guard, the authority people that we keep on seeing throughout the show. It's like a corporate government based on a planet, which is Morlana 1. And it governs a sector of space called the Free Trade Sector. This includes Morlana 4 and Ferrix. And Morlana 1 is essentially like a workers' town. So if anyone knows what a workers' town is, it's basically a town with shops, homes, everything else. Everyone in the town kind of works the same sort of job in the same sort of industry. And they kind of all just live together and coexist together in one spot. So that's essentially what this planet is. So they're not really part of the Empire, but throughout the whole show, as we see these guys in the blue suits show up, they're basically like a private division working as kind of like a police force for this this kind of business, I guess, that control.
That's what it seemed like to me. Is they were like the local police for that like sector, and then they were. So they'd be like the planet side police, but obviously the government would be all connected to the Empire. Yeah,
exactly. And that's why the show kind of kicks off with the superior of this division, or the security division of that company, of the corporate zone, goes off to an Imperial, what was it called again? An Imperial Regency security meeting or something like that. Where he has to kind of disclose how crime is on their planets and stuff like that. So, I really
like that scene, by the way.
Yeah, it was a good scene. Yeah, it was a really good scene.
Where it just shows the bureaucracy, where like they don't care. They just want their numbers to look good, even if it's not accurate, just so that they look like they're doing better than they are. Yeah, they don't actually care.
Yeah, it introduced one of my favorite characters of the show so far. I think is his name Cyril, the security guard, or the
deputy
that takes over.
Yeah, the deputy.
Yeah, the deputy. Like, really fascinating. Like the dichotomy between those two characters.
And
like what else happens later on.
New young blood who's just excited to get in there, wants to do a really good job and clean up the town, and then the old guy who's seen it all and just doesn't care anymore, just wants to collect his paycheck.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the old guy, his name's Stoic. He's like the high command guy at the corporate sector. He wants to basically cover up the murder that Andor committed on the system, which he murders 2 guards who held him at gunpoint for the shakedown. You know, trying to. I don't know. They were fooling around, and they ended up dead. One of them ended up dead, and he ends up shooting the other one in the face. That was a moment that I really don't want to skip over, because he just straight up shoots someone in the face, you know, to just get out of trouble, of course. But it reminded me a lot of when he executes that rebel spy that he's working with at the beginning of Rogue One. And I just thought to myself, like, man, like, you know, this guy's been through some stuff. Like, you know, he's just he's damaged. He's like, and I don't know, he's just kind of doing what he can to survive, but you know, it's really taking a toll on his character.
Yeah, it was interesting though, just because that was the polar opposite of what we had speculated would happen. Because we thought he was gonna, join the rebellion and whatever, be pretty like lighthearted and want to really, put it to the bad guys, and then slowly become this dark character that we see in Rogue One. But instead, we're seeing he was just always like this.
Yeah.
When,
Go ahead, Kirk.
And when he shot, when he shot the guy, like although he shot him, when I was watching, I was like, I feel like he probably hasn't done this for the first time. It looks like he's done it before as well, and he didn't want to do it in the past.
Yeah.
So that just like for me just shows how much of a I guess a survivor and a not so goody rebel Andor is. Not like we didn't know that after watching the first opening scene in Rogue One, but yeah, it was really really fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Rogue One, he has a very, I guess, like a moment where we kind of see him for real, and he says to Jin that he's been in this fight since he was, what is he, 6 years old or something? And
I think that sounds right.
Yeah, and I just thought to myself, like, wow, okay, well, he's been, I mean, it might not have been the Empire that whole time, but he's been doing something like for all that time, and it's kind of interesting that all these flashbacks are kind of beginning to tell that story from the moment that he's taken into that life, right? Like into the war, whatever his war may be, whatever he considers the fight, right? Whether it be for survival or for a particular faction or whatever, he never really specifies what the fight is. But ever since getting wrapped up in the rebellion, he's kind of just that fight that he's been going through has just kind of persisted. So, it'll be interesting to see kind of like where they take that character and all the different plot points that they have set out for his younger years, I guess. We're introduced to a couple friends of Andor's, one of which is a droid named B2EMO. He speaks like a protocol droid, but a bit more robotically. And he's actually voiced and played, I guess, by Dave Chapman, who is a puppeteer and actor who also played BB-8 in the sequels. So it was kind of a nice cameo, I guess, to bring a notable actor back to play another droid. What did you guys think
cool
of?
Droid.
Yeah, what did you guys think of B as like his nickname? Yeah,
I think he's a cool trash can.
Yeah,
It's nice to see a droid that is kind of like reminiscent of like an R2 unit, but it's not just another R2 unit, right? So we're seeing like this kind of junky box thing is very quite cowardly, I would say. But the construction of it, where he can kind of like almost bend like an accordion, I thought was really cool.
yeah.
I feel like his personality was almost a blend of R2 and C3PO, like being able to talk and obviously being able to beep like R2. I liked it.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty cool. He's a cool character.
Got a lot of emotion out of him. I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and I think that's what makes him unique, because we've never seen a droid that small with that much kind of speech personality to him. We did have Dio from episode 9, and he was able to speak a little bit for such a little guy, but he spoke very, very short sentences, and it was very kind of nervous and, very kind of cowardly because of his previous owner. It's like, it kind of reminded me a little bit of that, but also very much held his own character through the show. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. He's kind of been, I guess, the family droid, because he's in the flashbacks as well, like when they first take Cassian from his homeworld. So it's kind of funny to see him all polished and new, and then see him like all rugged and dented and old, like like years later. So yeah.
And I find it really funny because I know, I think I'm trying to remember where it is, but I swear something comes up where there's like droids can't lie, and so like there's kind of the first conversation that you see between Cassian and B, and Cassian's trying to get him to lie. He's like, "Oh, that's going to take a lot of power."
Yeah,
it's way harder to lie for droids.
It just goes against their programming, right?
Yeah, so he's got to like bypass.
Yeah. So Bix, another friend of Andor's, she's a feisty dealer in like a mechanic shop, and it seems that she runs and owns the mechanic shop because her name is actually an Orbesh above the garage door. Her last name, that is.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I kind of figured like, okay, well, I guess that's why she's kind of just running the show over there. You know, there's no one higher than her. She's kind of like, that's her business. And it seems to me and the audience that she's kind of got a side thing going on. And she goes into town, uses a hidden comm tower in a neighbor's business of some kind. She sends out a telegraph, and it's probably to the client that she speaks to Andor about in regards to selling his very prized item that he's been saving for, I guess, the day that he wants to kind of finally leave Ferrix, which is Ferrix, right? The name of the planet that they're on. So I thought that was kind of cool. We see like a Star Wars version of a telegraph machine, which, you know, very popular use of technology back in the World Wars. And we saw kind of the beginning stages of what it might be to be part of a rebel cell, but not really kind of actively doing missions, but more of being like kind of like from the sidelines, you're like the contact, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but when I first started watching the show, it wasn't until the second time around that I really started clue into a lot of things. The first time around, I was very confused when it came to like what's her relationship to the client, you know, and how on earth is she like able to kind of have this side business selling what, right? Like what exactly is like going on here? I was just kind of confused, right? So like, is she part of the rebellion or is she not part of the rebellion? You know, it's just like, it's kind of elusive, like, I guess.
Well, they're in a scrap yard, so I think she's like the middle person to sell black market stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I guess a lot of her clients being are probably rebel cell clients, right? Just based on her secrecy around the whole thing. Yeah, and she's using Andor as a scavenger in that regards to collect all the parts that she's selling. So I thought that was very interesting. And I guess it kind of fills in a little bit of an answer in regards to how does the rebellion supply itself? Because, you know, there's a whole empire out there, right? And they need people, obviously, to get parts for repairing their ships. And you know, somehow they got people working in every area of business in regards to like funding and everything, you know, ships, weapons manufacturing, all that stuff. They got people everywhere trying to support the cause, right? And I think what we're seeing is like, it's from Andor's perspective. So he's kind of the outsider and absent knowledge towards all of this stuff, you know, until the third episode where, you know, we'll get into it. But I think that's when like a lot of stuff is going to become clear to him. It's like, oh, like I can fight this for real. Like I'm just kind of the bottom of the chain, kind of lightly supporting this whole effort, but like I can really become something more in this story. So I thought that was kind of neat, and Bix plays a huge part in that. So how'd you like Bix?
Yeah. It was almost like watching the bottom of the substructure of what forms the rebellion. I remember, I think it was in The Last Jedi when Benicio del Toro's character is a DJ, when he was explaining how, you know, this who owns this ship. It was a weapons manufacturer for the First Order and also the Resistance. And that was like the top level where you see, okay, so the Resistance obviously gets parts and has to manufacture from someone. But I feel like this showed right down to the bottom of where it all comes from. And at least from when I watched it the second time, from Bix specifically, I could be wrong, but it almost felt like Andor and Bix had a relationship in the past, and her business partner, or her partner now, I think it was Tim, was obviously a little bit jealous of that, and that got involved with how she was running her operation.
Totally.
As well.
Am I crazy, or did at some point they say that she was his cousin?
Yeah, so the second time that I listened and watched it, I didn't catch that. I think I was just going crazy because I thought that yesterday, but yeah, no, I think they're all just kind of friends. And I think Tim, like what you mentioned, Kirk, is like Tim is a guy who works for Bix Colleen, and they have a bit of a overly friendly relationship as coworkers. And I think he's just a little bit jealous because he sees Andor, who is also a colleague of his / friend, I guess. They all kind of know each other. And he's always kind of like having secret meetings with her and kind of whispering in her ear stuff. And she always looks upset with him, but she goes out in the middle of the night to meet him at a cantina anyways, and like all this random stuff. And he's just kind of like the jealous boyfriend that's like, oh, I really like this girl. And she looks like she's in trouble, kind of associating with whatever with this guy. and I'm not a huge fan of it. And that's kind of his thought process, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I
thought,
feel like that he probably thinks that Cassian's moving in on his girl.
100%.
Yeah.
It was like I thought the Bix character was really good, but the one thing I was just like she could do better was her excuses every time she had to run off to do something. Like I'm just running some errands.
You just gotta run an errand.
I use that same excuse at work.
Yeah, I'm just like, can't you just say something else? Like, I gotta deliver this ship part or to this person. But no, she just she's the worst excuse maker.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Apart from that,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure in the
Yeah.
first 3 episodes she uses that excuse like over 3 times. It's like 3 or 4 times or something. Like, oh, where are you going?
She's a busy lady.
Gotta run an errand. Yeah, I mean, like she is the shop owner, so it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, it's like he knows something's going on, right? So it's just like, okay, well, I think eventually he's gonna get to the point where it's he's had enough, and certainly gets there. But Tim is his name. Very interesting guy. Plays a bit of a part in this story, and at one point, Tim actually makes a reference to Wabani, which is the planet that first appeared in Rogue One. It's the site of the prison camp where Cassian Andor finds Jyn Erso in the Rogue One film. And it really doesn't have anything to do with Rogue One. It's just kind of a nice little cameo, like a name drop. I think it had something to do with their business, is like the Wabani run or whatever. And probably something in regards to some ship or some supply run or whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, I recognize that name. Yeah, we had some cameos as well with the shipyard. Blake, you caught this yesterday. We had the Shadowcaster model Lancer class pursuit craft show up in the big shipyard where Andor is kind of fixing up the ship that he borrowed, I guess, from that really kind of ticked off ship yard owner with the Corellian hounds, and which was also a nice cameo from Solo. But
is that the first time we've seen the Shadowcaster in live action?
I'd be willing to bet that it was in the mix in episode 9, just because like every ship in the galaxy was there. I'm pretty sure they probably threw it in. But we also had appearances of a Snowspeeder T-47-esque looking ship. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was like a beefier, kind of larger version. And there was also a Y-wing in there. So it turns out that
a bunch of random ships.
Yeah, a bunch of random ships. I thought it was kind of cool appearances in there. Turns out Cassian's borrowed ship is a very reluctant business owner. Basically tells him to shove off. So there goes his ride, and hence kind of the reason why he has to pay that guy a large amount of money to essentially want to borrow. I guess a ship or rent a ship or I don't know.
I think that was just to get off planet.
Yeah, just to get off planet. Yeah, because what he wants to do is he wants to sell his merch through Bix's contact and then just ditch Ferrix. Like he wants to get the heck out of there.
Well, the heat's pretty high right now, right?
Yeah, and he knows that.
Yeah,
because that same guy kind of lets him know, like, kind of reading off the news, I guess, the news headlines that they're looking for a Kenari young, a guy from Kenari, and his official records, they've been shammed so that it looks like he's been born on Ferrix, but he knows the truth. He's the guy that they're looking for, and so he's kind of in a hasty rush.
He keeps asking for people if they've seen a woman from Kenari. So
yeah, because he's looking for a sister, of course. So The Pre-More Authority is pushed by Mr. Anal Deputy Inspector to find the murderer of the guards. So that investigation kind of kicks off. It's kind of on its way. I really do like his character as well, Kirk. Like he's kind of this very interesting, actually takes his job seriously, whereas like no one else kind of cares. Like everyone's like, oh, two guys just died in a slum alley, like whatever. Kind of thing, like they were messing around.
As the head guy says, like before he blows it off and leaves, the two cops there, they were supposed to be on duty. Instead, they were at a lady's house, let's call it.
Yeah,
trying to get some entertainment for the evening. And they were. I think he said they were on drugs and stuff too. So it's like these guys were they were write-offs. They were like useless employees. So what does he care? And they're
Yeah.
living in some backwater dirt town. So like,
Yeah.
Nobody really cares really, right?
Right.
They know they're not going to change anything. So why bother?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting that once he leaves and he kind of tells the deputy, like, yeah, just leave it, you know, come up with a good excuse as to why they died and we'll just kind of move on with life. Yeah. And I think that's why things get really interesting. It's because like the deputy kind of goes out of his way to like, no, let's investigate. And, you know,
which is exactly against the orders he was told.
Yeah.
To do. So when Boss Man gets back, he's going to be in a lot of trouble, I think.
Yeah. He get massive
Especially because like
he was.
I was just say because like
go ahead. Go for it, Blake. I was gonna say we go back and forth there. I was gonna say like he's like the perfect display of like a person that has only ever pushed paper and never like held a blaster before. That's what I feel like he was like. And obviously when he went on the battlefield first, and that speech that he gave, I was just like, he's probably just searched up the Star Wars YouTube equivalent on motivational speeches and then given that for the first time. So that's why I thought it was great. It was it was really interesting. I think he's like a best representation of someone that's never actually stepped foot off the starship before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely
totally
over his what was the expression I'm looking for? Out of his his norm
wheelhouse.
Right? Out of his wheelhouse. Yeah. In the flashbacks, the kids make their way. So like we have flashbacks of, as I mentioned, of young Cassian Andor on his homeworld, who are not speaking Basic, which is English. And they see a crash ship.
No subtitles.
No, there's no subtitles. That's exactly it. Yeah, we're not supposed to understand them. If you do turn on subtitles on Disney Plus, it'll just say speaking Crenari. So we're not intended to understand what they're saying, but they see a crash ship kind of like enter in on their home planet, and they go off to investigate the crashed ship. And he leaves a little girl behind in their town, which is, or in their camp, I guess, where they have some tree houses set up. And I don't know, maybe it could be his little sister. I'm not entirely sure, but
that's what it seemed like.
Yeah, and then it cuts to black. That's the end of the first episode. But let's get into episode 2 here. So it actually picks up that.
I was like, can we start with the kids? Because actually, I want to chat about them a little bit.
Yeah, so it picks up with the flashback. Continuing, and a young Cassian looks over a large quarry on his homeworld, which happens to be an abandoned Imperial mine. Some sort of Imperial mining disaster happened there. Everyone died. It was terrible. They all kind of packed up and left. So now it's just a lot of the.
I think it might be one more than that. It's like, because this is exactly what I was going to get into.
Yeah.
Because there's only kids left, and they've formed essentially a Lord of the Flies situation. All these kids, right? And so I think what happened was there was the mine had a horrible accident, and all of the adults were killed.
Yeah.
And so all these kids that were probably left in the town or whatever, they were the sole survivors. So they've just been abandoned on this planet, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all the parents obviously like maybe stowed the kids away before everything happened, and obviously they may have been the only ones that survived, and hence explaining why they're the only ones left.
There's a bit of a continuity thing that I'm a little confused at, and maybe we'll get answers to it later. But in the first episode, the ship guy, or maybe it's the second episode, is the guy he talks to buy a ship for 700 credits, or get a ride out of Ferrex kind of thing. He says that the Imperial mining disaster on his homeworld essentially was an Imperial mining disaster. But the flashback is clearly based in the days of the Clone Wars, because the characters present in that scene that come for him reference Republic ships coming out of space, orbiting the planet, and the guys in the uniform, the crew on the ship, are wearing Separatist kind of flight crew uniforms. And the patches on their sleeve have the... So I was really confused when he said Imperial mining disaster, because at this point in time, all the adults are dead. But it probably wasn't the Empire that actually... So I don't know if it's maybe he was kind of retroactively looking at at a different faction as like the Empire. Maybe it was the Republic that was there. I'm not entirely sure. But Yeah, that hopefully we get an answer to. Maybe it could be just like I don't know. I highly doubt they made a mistake in the story with timeline stuff, but there was a few things that kind of popped up that I was like, oh, that doesn't really line up too well.
No, that's a good point. Because I was looking at that patch, I thought it was the Imperial Science patch, but you're right, the timeline doesn't work out for that.
I think that there's maybe some more flashbacks to come, and I have a feeling that although there were no adults there, I feel like this mining disaster mentioned may have happened a lot later after when they were kids, potentially. I'm not sure. And when I hear Imperial mining disaster, I hear also potentially another early Death Star test, because that's what they called the Imperial mining disaster in Rogue One. So I feel like although those kids were there, I feel like that mining disaster may have happened maybe 20 years afterwards. And obviously there was such a small little clan of kids, and there's the questions why are there any kids there as well. Yeah. So that's what my initial thought was. But if that was the planet after mining disaster and they were calling them Imperials and everything, yeah, I think that does raise some questions about timeline and continuity.
Doesn't Cassian also at one point refer to Chronari as a was? Like when he references the planet, he almost speaks of it as if it's not really a planet anymore.
Yeah, I feel like it could have been maybe a Death Star test. I reckon. I reckon it's definitely a big thing, because obviously when they did it, the name escapes me of the Jeddah. When they did it on Jeddah, it was only at like one single reactor power, I believe the quote was, and it pretty much wiped out half the planet. I'd say we didn't get a big wide shot at the end, but I have a feeling after I think it would have been in episode 2, but I might be going into 3, so I won't go just yet. But I feel like after that whole interaction with all the kids on the planet, something could have happened to that planet on a whole, because when they were there, everything was still quite intact. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So his homeworld of Casa, it is. I think the story there is there's a lot more to it, but it's a planet that if you look it up, there's not a whole lot about it, and it's when he refers to it in the show, it's a very subtle drop, but it is almost like in like a past tense when he references Casa. So maybe it's completely uninhabitable now. Like maybe something further happened later. I don't know what happened in that flashback. It's clearly during the Clone Wars. The mining kind of quarry looks deserted, but maybe
it's the walls and everything collapsed.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If it was an Imperial mining disaster, maybe the Empire comes in, uses it later, and then something more terrible happens, and it might be that maybe something is released into the air and it becomes like a toxic environment. No one can live there anymore. So maybe that's what the past tense is for. Maybe that's what the yellow gas poisoning all of the Separatist flight crew that crashed down. Maybe that's what it is. Like I'm not entirely sure yet, but I guess we'll find out in the next couple episodes. I would assume. So, yeah.
One last thing before we move on, because I can tell we're moving on here. The Easter egg that I thought, if you can call it that, it was kind of neat. Is a mining planet, and there's a mining disaster, and it's called Canary, like a canary in the coal mine. I thought that was kind of funny.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
Maybe that's where they got it. I don't know.
I think so. I think that's where they got the idea.
There was, speaking of small cameo appearances or little subtle drops, we get the very famous trailer scene in which a guy goes up to the bell tower in the town and hits the bell with these giant hammers. And it's actually the bell is actually made of Beskar. So that's a giant piece of Beskar. Yeah.
So where did it come from?
So the reason I know this is because when I watch it around the second time, I always put on audio description and subtitles. And audio description reveals a lot. And I think I mentioned this when we were doing the Book of Boba Fett. and audio description just kind of confirms things that otherwise you kind of might infer but not really know about, and it actually like does say like it's like it hits the Beskar bell, and I was like, oh no way, like that's a giant slab of Beskar. That's crazy. So
I don't know how I feel about that, because Beskar is supposed to be super rare and only on Mandalore.
I think yeah, go ahead, Kirk.
That's a lot of Mando armor, I was about to say.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like it's this huge honking thing, and the hammers as well. But you know, all I could think to myself was like, maybe there's something about Ferrix that's like perhaps got some Mando history to it. Like maybe they're referencing the old Mandalorian wars or something. Like maybe Mandalorians were once settled there at one point, once upon a time. It is a very kind of desert planet, so it's not super different from where they're used to living, I guess. But well, it depends what you're looking at, because Mandalore originally was a forested farming planet. Yeah. You know, post post kind of destruction of their home world. They still just decided to stay there, right? So. I thought to myself like, oh wow, that's a giant piece of Beskar. That must be super heavy. Or really light. I forget exactly how much it's supposed to weigh, but I just thought it was interesting.
I feel like if there was any guy that took his job more seriously than the other corporate officer was the bell guy.
Yeah,
like
that guy really liked his job.
He did.
He's so passionate.
Cassian arrives home, and his adoptive mother, her name is Marva. She's played by the same actress who plays Dudley's mom from Harry Potter.
That's right.
Yeah. And she knows about the authorities looking for Andor, which news is spread now, and she has helped cover up his past by kind of unofficially / officially adopting him. She's kind of stated on all official records that he was born on Ferrix, Fest. And it's assumed that maybe a few people out there know his true identity or his true past, which Bix and Tim do, some of his close friends. And Fest is a planet that's appeared before in both the new Disney canon and old Legends continuities. In the current canon, it's a planet that houses a rebel headquarters. And in Legends, the planet held an Imperial base. Most famously, it was used as a level in the classic first-person shooter Dark Forces. I feel like Phil should be here right now to kind of give a 20-minute long rant about how much he loves Dark Forces. But we'll get that next time. Cool little kind of cameo drops. Bix tells Andor that the buyer is coming, kind of bad timing with pre-more investigation teams kind of on the way, hunting Andor down. And him constantly spying on Bix is like kind of on her quiet side business. He's had enough. He goes to the public comm booth, which is basically a public telephone, and he calls the pre-more authority, rats out Andor. They start to investigate his official profile, and the deputy inspector decides that it's him. The brothel hostess comes into the room and likely confers, it's probably off screen, but confirms that Andor is the guy that they're probably looking for, because she did speak to him at the brothel house. And so kind of like the hunt begins. But it might be kind of an insignificant thing, but what did you guys think of this like public payphone comm system? It's like, I think we've only seen that once in the Clone Wars, but other than that, I was impressed just how much they managed to Star Warsify a public telephone.
My favorite part was as soon as you went up to use it, the guy next to him, the alien there, and like the next booth over, kind of like scowls at him, like turns his back. It's like just, classic like payphone move.
Yeah, like classic anyone using a public telephone is just like kind of like doing some shady business or something like it.
Yeah, trying to get as much privacy as you can in this like super small cramped booth. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was almost like was there another like telephone booth next to him that he could have used to leave like a one person gap? You know, when people don't use the gap
like urinals.
Yeah, like at the that's it's like, all right, why are you standing right next to me. There's a free one over there.
Yeah. It's like
right in the
that
middle.
moment when you walk into the men's washroom and there's like a lineup of urinals. You never pick the one next to a guy that's using one. You always go to the other end of the room, or you leave one to space. You know, it's just like the unofficial unsaid rule. It's like it's in the bro code.
Right.
Like you don't go and stand next to a guy in a row of urinals that are all free.
In Star Wars, you don't stand next to a guy making a suspicious transfer outside of the.
That's right.
phone booth.
Yeah, you pick the booth like two away kind of thing. But yeah, it's kind of funny. They're very reminiscent of phone booths here in North America. In England, I guess phone booths are very much kind of in an enclosed environment, like a small tower. I mean, I think a lot of people are familiar with what those look like, the red telephone booths, or if anyone's seen Doctor Who with the police call box, you know, it's like a little building like made for a phone. But what do you guys have in Australia for public phones? Like I've never been there before. I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I think it's probably same as what it is in North America. We don't have big boxes we go into, but there's occasionally every once in a while there's a few, like 10 of them in a row, but they're all kind of free now, and they're all actually public Wi-Fi hotspots. They converted them all to, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, but yeah, like you don't use coins anymore. Like you can just go off to them and call. But yeah, I've never used a payphone before. Not for probably like 15 years, I'd say.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I'll say I in my day I used them more for pranks than I did for kind of practical. Especially when caller ID was a thing, like first coming around. Because I know I got caught from that once, and then you use the payphone instead, so it's anonymous.
Yeah,
I've learned. And I'm sure back then you knew when you were using the payphone not to go right next to the other guy when you were using it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, small towns that we only had one.
Yeah. It wasn't so much going next to the guy. It was more of like, okay,
Waiting
who
in
are you
line.
standing behind? Yeah.
Yeah. You keep looking at your watch and tapping your foot.
Yeah. In classic Star Wars fashion, we kind of cut to the middle of the action, and as they read off Andor's official profile, it's actually apparent that he's known already for insurrection, destruction of Imperial property, and assault on Imperial soldiers. So he's already kind of known with a record. He's already got something to his name as far as kind of crimes against the Empire goes, which I thought was interesting. It also leaves a bit of space for them to kind of tell us how that may have happened, like between his youth and now. So I think maybe for the whole season, unlike Book of Boba, where we only got flashbacks for half the show, I think this show will go the full length and deliver us flashbacks in every episode. That's just my theory, but you know, we'll see it. We'll see if it happens. How do you guys like this flashback thing? Do you like kind of going back and forth like this, or is it kind of a little distracting?
I'm liking
Well, I'm
it.
glad. Yeah, I'm liking it as well. I'm glad that there aren't any actual like translations, because at first I thought I forgot to put on the subtitles.
Yeah, we did the
liking
same thing.
I'm liking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so too. My one concern is now we've got 2 series in a row doing it, so it's like, is this gonna become a thing? Like they always have to do it. You know what I mean? Because I also pointed out that we've had multiple shows now where there's these grizzled soldiers taking care of a child. So it's like they have 2 formulas now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, fair enough.
We want story A or story B.
Yeah,
Those are our options.
Formula A or B. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as they don't keep doing it. I think, Josh, didn't we talk about that there's supposed to be a 3rd timeline? Or am I crazy?
A 3rd timeline in Andor?
Maybe I'm getting it mixed up. We talked about different timelines going on in shows.
Oh, I think
I'm thinking
you might be thinking
High
of
Republic.
You might be thinking of High Republic or Tales of the Jedi. I feel like all this jumping around with all the new Star Wars stories, it kind of gets all jumbled a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I thought there was going to be 3, but I think I might have just got it mixed up then.
Right. Tim and Bix, they got a hot night going on. You know, she goes over.
She couldn't sleep.
They hook up. Yeah. I was like, all I could think about was like, have we seen anything like this before in Star Wars? And
in Star Wars,
yeah, and
in the
only,
books,
the only thing I could think of is like the night that Anakin spends at Padme's. He wakes up with nightmares, goes into the living room and stuff. That's like the only thing that I was like, oh yeah, similar-ish, but you know. I mean, we got a shirtless Anakin. Like, I feel like that was maybe like the closest to this moment that we got.
There's comics. I know there's like in the Lando comic, he's like in bed with a lady, and he's like waking up with nightmares or whatever.
On screen though. I mean, on screen, have we ever seen anything?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's never really been a
Star Wars
comparable
is
moment.
super PG.
It is,
Like,
yeah. It's
especially
super.
It's
yeah.
like in Star Wars, there's always kissing is the equivalent of sex. Like,
yeah.
that's what it was.
Yeah, it's almost like that in combination with Andor just like shooting a guy after looking him in the eyes for like 10 seconds, and then between this, I'm just like, this is not like for kids. This is
Yeah, it's
even
a
though
bit
it's
more
not too
gritty.
violent.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not the first show, and I feel like the first 3 episodes, if I was like, if I was a 10-year-old kid getting into Star Wars, I'd be like, man, what did I just watch? I want to go back to the prequels and all the fighting and the lightsabers and stuff. Like, this is a very
too
big
slow.
departure in my opinion. Yeah, from
Yeah.
the normal stuff. Yeah.
That being said, I'm really liking it a lot. So
Yeah, exactly.
And-
It's good.
It's a
Yeah.
new it's
I
a
find
new
it
genre
funny, though,
for Star
Josh.
Wars. Yeah.
Yeah, I find it funny though that you're like flagging that there's this. Well, you could say it's a one. No, that this couple is having relations, but you didn't flag the fact that in the first episode they go to what is essentially a whorehouse.
Well, I think that's just because
That's
we didn't
true.
really see much. Like, I kind of looked it up.
It's
So
very implied.
it's
that
very
these ladies
implied.
Are ladies of the night.
Yeah, it's very implied. The hologram in that first episode in the lounge that you're talking about. I mean, because it's not directly referred to as a brothel, but there is a
Yeah, it's
there's
a brothel.
it's a brothel because in the
Yeah.
audio description it listed the woman who comes in who spoke to him as the brothel hostess. And
Oh, there you go.
the hologram showed a go-go dancer, which I thought like, oh well, maybe it's just like a bar with go-go dancers because that's also maybe a thing. Like, but no, it's straight up a brothel. So
I knew they weren't just going in there to play with lightsabers. It was not.
Or were they?
PG-13.
Yeah. No wonder that guy was so angry. He was getting cut in line.
yeah.
Yeah. It's my turn.
That's right. I've been waiting here 20 minutes.
We're just getting into Game of Thrones now.
Yeah. Maybe that's what they're doing. They're testing the waters.
Yeah, they're testing the waters. Yeah, can we do an R-rated Star Wars movie? Would any of you guys watch an R-rated Star Wars movie?
I thought of an
It's-
R-rated Vader horror movie, like him just ripping
That'd be
up people.
cool.
I don't
That'd
know.
be
Yeah,
interesting.
like,
It's
that'd be
like,
interesting.
yeah, it'd have to like R-rated as in like the Logan equivalent, like the Wolverine Logan movie. Yes.
So R-rated for
R-rated,
violence over
like Game of
Yeah.
like like I'm not interested in like
Yeah.
topless Twi'leks.
No.
I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
if you really wanted to go and look at that, you can elsewhere. I have no interest in seeing that in mainstream.
Right.
In mainstream
Yeah.
Star Wars stuff. Yeah.
But as far as like gritty action, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might be getting a little bit sidetracked here, but in terms of, I know there's some common criticism in Star Wars these days is that Disney has been a little bit lighter in terms of, the violence and everything.
Yeah.
But I couldn't
Yeah.
agree. I couldn't disagree more. I feel like Star Wars has never been, even from the opening scene of The Force Awakens with the blood on the Stormtrooper helmet,
Mhm.
I feel like it's never been this more violent compared to any other Star Wars. Obviously, that's very subjective, but
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
it's
It
not
really
any
depends
more-
on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Depends on
really-
the show.
yeah.
Because like Rebels was way less violent than
Yeah.
Clone Wars was, for example.
Mm.
But everyone thought they'd be the same.
Yeah.
But I think Josh, you pointed out that it actually was a slightly younger audience.
Yeah, it was designed for Disney Plus, Disney XD, whereas Clone Wars was put on Cartoon Network, and George himself described Clone Wars as for teenagers, whereas I think Rebels was kind of designed for that preteen, kind of younger, kids between 10 and 12 sort of age. So
Yeah.
just young
Okay.
enough that we don't see anyone with blaster holes in their suits, whereas like in Clone Wars, like you straight up see a clone trooper get like charred out from the inside, like there's like like glowing rings around where the blaster bolt just went right through the chest and stuff like that, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's not in Rebels, but yeah, no, I agree with you, Kirk. I think like as far as the movies goes, like they've been pretty consistent. Blood and stuff on the helmet kind of reminded me of like when the Nexu scrapes Padme's back in the Geonosian arena. So they've gone as far as that before. Of course, Anakin, we can't forget his like charred up body and on fire.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
that's
like,
probably the most extreme. To be
yeah,
honest.
yeah. So the immolation scene. But yeah, I mean, as far as the shows go, like, you know, the violence hasn't disappointed.
It's just Revenge of the
Mandalorian.
Sith though, because like also the death of younglings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
That is true.
dead kids on the
Thankfully
ground
not
all over the
Ukraine.
place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mandalorian, Book of Boba. It was the Book of Boba episode that we got Mandalorian cutting people's limbs off left, right, and center with the Darksaber in that butcher house, and that was really cool. Like when he basically cuts that dude in half on the table. That was pretty next level as well. So, you know, I feel like you're right in the sense, like the live action stuff, it's keeping to that mark of like, you know, good kind of violence action in Star Wars, but yeah,
Do you
for the
feel
other
like-
stuff,
do
it
you feel
really
like-
depends on the show.
Do you feel like Book of Boba took a step back from that though? I feel like it was less violent.
Well, that scene with Mando
was just-
is in the Book of Boba, so
Right. Yeah, I guess because I
yeah.
picture that as part of the Mandalorian.
yeah.
Man,
Book of
Mando
Boba,
season
you
2.
could call it Mando 2.5 if you'd rather.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
confusing.
yeah. I feel like not just violence, but I feel like just the themes and what's shown on screen, like the romance, and then obviously the brothel and everything. Like we haven't seen that quite. Or maybe not recently, but it's good to see that they're taking those steps rather than just producing. And I love Rebels, but rather than just producing Rebels, kind of those extremes or as well. So yeah, it's good. It's good because it makes Star Wars and the whole galaxy seem more realistic and less glossy, I guess.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, it is interesting. I think they're trying to split their audience a bit because this is for an older audience, and then they got Skeleton Crew coming out, which is for like a quite a bit younger audience compared to
Yeah,
say Mandalorian, which is maybe more middle of the road.
yeah. Skeleton Crew will be for younger viewers. That much has kind of been made clear. There's also a new animated series called I think is it Tales of the Jedi or something something along those lines. And
Yeah.
or sorry, not Tales of the Jedi. That's Clone Wars age based. There's another one. I think it's like Young Jedi something or another. There's another animated show that's coming out next year. I totally forget what it's called, and I think it's High Republic based, and it's for like really young viewers. Like we're talking like 6 and 7, kind of something around there. So
Which is the same as Resistance.
yeah, something maybe close to that. Yeah. So
Young Jedi Adventures.
yes,
Young
yes,
Jedi Adventures.
Young Jedi Adventures. Yeah. So if you look up Young Jedi Adventures, you can get a screen.
His names are just getting so unoriginal.
Yeah, so Young Jedi Adventures, animated series. It's going to be focused on preschooler, grade school, and families, and it's set to release on Disney Plus in 2023 and Disney Junior, which is, I guess, a public TV channel. There's one snapshot so far with the title card and what the characters look like, and it's Yoda and like a bunch of Jedi trainees. There's like a new kind of species there, or like alien species that they're debuting with this show, which is basically like a blue furry Ewok kind of style character. And it's definitely evident to me that's like, okay, yeah, now they're targeting like a whole new younger age group than they ever have before. So
They
they're
look
really
like trolls.
they're really hitting all the
Like
bases, I
Trolls
think,
toys.
with yeah. But okay, yeah. So to get back to Andor here, the crashed ship in the flashback seems to be a Separatist ship. The patches on the uniforms kind of confirm this. It's established in the lore that when Cassian says in Rogue One that he's been fighting since he was 6 years old, he possibly meant that he was also fighting for the Separatists because just the way that the timelines work out, which is the losing side of the Clone Wars, as we know. And we get to see a little bit of that history in the flashbacks in his childhood on Kenari. And the ship that crash lands on the planet seems to be piloted by Separatist operatives, which, you know, we just mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, and they're all like, it's like poison gas or something escaped on the ship, and everyone's like choking to death.
Yeah. I thought that was
Yellow
kind of
and bloated.
right. So there's a lot of questions that kind of surround this thing, but you know, this was the episode that kind of put that in focus. Luthen Rail is the name of the client, the guy working with Bix, who's prepared to buy this piece of merch that Andor has. And audio description and subtitle related note is the voice that he speaks to in his ship when he's landing, and he kind of talks to his ship, and it's like a kind of like a smart assistant that tells him landing plan optimized or whatever. It's actually called a Fondor droid mod. Fondor is the name of the system that makes a crap ton of ships. Like that's just kind of what they do. The Fondor shipyards. And I thought it was kind of interesting little piece of knowledge that otherwise wouldn't have if I didn't have like the subtitles and the audio description on. But yeah, it's called a Fondor droid mod. So just a little bit of an interesting kind of, name cameo there. And the character Luthen Rail is played by Stellan Skarsgård, who's also known from Pirates of the Caribbean. Kirk, where do you recognize him from mostly?
I think Avengers is probably the easiest one. He was Professor, wasn't he? And
oh yeah, of course, yeah. Thor, yeah, he was in Thor as the Doctor, yeah.
First Thor movie, yeah.
And I think I remember seeing him in Chernobyl as well. Actually, the biggest thing I remember him from was Dune recently. He was the Baron.
Of course.
That's right, yeah.
Although he did not look like Stellan Skarsgård, that's for sure.
No. Yeah, is the what's the character's name? The Emperor guy.
The Baron Harkonnen, yeah.
Baron,
in
right,
Doom.
right,
Yeah, the Baron, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, great. I think he's an awesome actor, and he really fits the sci-fi genre. So it's cool to see him in Star Wars.
Totally, yeah, and that's kind of what I was gonna mention. Like, how do you guys, like his character? I mean, I thought his character is pretty mysterious so far, but I like it. I'm really digging his way of talking too. He's got a bit of a slang to how he talks and pronounces Cassian Andor's name throughout the episode, and
I don't know if he was just saying it wrong.
Yeah.
he just didn't read the script correctly. Like Han.
Yeah.
Right?
These days will end, Cassian Andor.
Andor. I think he's just used to being Bootstrap Bill, so he's still talking like a pirate.
Yeah. I remember, I looked at you yesterday and all I said was what was it about Bootstrap? Yeah. We taught a cannon to bootstraps.
That's right.
That part of the movie, I can't get it up there.
That was almost a very good Aussie accent there. I give you 5 stars out of 5 for that one.
nice
Thanks, man.
push.
Yeah. Well, it's funny as far as Aussie accents go. When I was in Florida, we saw a Hard Rock Cafe, but the R on the logo was not lit up, so I pronounced it as the Hard Rock. And I was like, that sounds like something that maybe someone from Australia might say. You want to go up there and something? Yeah, but the Hard Rock.
You can be the next Crocodile Dundee. We'll see.
There you go.
That'd be awesome. Flashback of Cassian's younger years, the attack of the crew with the children. Their leader person dies. Andor goes rogue and starts investigating the Separatist ship. And the episode ends with a very kind of rock-like music, which we've rarely heard before in Star Wars, and jogs through a salvage yard, which reminded me of Braca, which is seen in Fallen Order, the video game, as well as the Bad Batch season 1, where we first meet Captain Rex in that show. But it was kind of cool. I mean, gives the planet a bit more depth with the salvage yard, and the music was fantastic. I thought it was like, wow, it's great. I love seeing new things in Star Wars that we haven't seen before, and I feel like the only other time we've seen rock music in Star Wars was like the Clone Wars show, and specifically like the Battle of Teth, when we get like the vulture droids, and it was Obi-Wan Kenobi is coming in, and there's like that crazy, or no, I think it's when they're scaling the cliff. I think it's when they're scaling the cliff, and Ahsoka and Anakin are kind of riding Staps like up the side of the Teth Mountain, and there's like this, just like this rock.
Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
What? Yeah.
Even then, I have to admit, it fell out of place.
So, did you not like the music ending of this?
Most of it's been fine. I don't. To me, electro guitar just feels weird in Star Wars.
Yeah. Kirk, what'd you think of this ending to the second episode?
At least in terms of the music, I thought that's one of the things I haven't noticed in in all of the episodes so far. I think like Mando, for example, that's like it's iconic music now, and all Star Wars music is iconic, at least in the prequels and the original trilogy. But yeah, that's one thing I guess I don't really have an opinion on, because I don't remember any themes at all, and there's nothing really too iconic. And I guess that's maybe a bit of a miss, considering that Star Wars is known for being quite reliant and theme expressive with their music. So maybe we'll see some more themes in the future. But yeah, I guess that's a bit of a miss for me.
Right. Yeah. So here's the song. I think this is the one that I was comparing it to, but. You can hear like the really like deep guitar in the background.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah,
like, you know,
that's
those
the one
memes,
from. Sorry,
memes
I
these
think that's
days
from Clone Wars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
All right, let me skip forward a bit. Oh, wait. Oh, here it is. Wait.
Sounds like generic action music.
Yeah. It's like it's very interesting electric
man.
guitar and stuff. So yeah, very
sounds
kind of
like-
out of place in a way, but
You know that
Yeah.
it was really popular a few years ago. It's like almost like a Russian orchestra, and they have like guitar, and they do Christian or they do a Christmas music.
right.
You guys remember this?
It sounds.
That's
familiar.
what it sounds like to
It sounds
me.
familiar, but yeah.
I think it can be tasteful using different instruments. Like, for example, at the opening season in season 2, of The Mandalorian, where they use
Yeah.
like the guitar to, I guess, a bit more of a rendition of the original theme. But it can be used. But anyway, I hope we get some more good music.
No, I get it. Yeah, sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss. So yeah, I felt the vibe in the room. Just like people were like, yeah, it doesn't really sound like Star Wars, but yeah, I don't know. I didn't mind it too much, but it seems like so you guys aren't on board with the rock music then.
Well, I feel like maybe they're pushing too much. To me, I feel like you can do pretty much anything in the Star Wars universe, and it'll feel like Star Wars as long as the music is right.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know. I just prefer my orchestral music. What can I say?
That's fair. That's fair. All right. Episode 3. It's called Reckoning. And there's not as much to talk about in this one just because it's a whole lot of action. But it seems like we got time to get into that. Flashback, young Andor who explores the ship. Again, yellow gas has intoxicated the ship crew. Here we go. The shuttle that Luthen rides on looks like a train car. It's a neat vintage, very Star Wars-y kind of design. And Kirk, you're kind of like the design guy around here. Like, what would you think of that shuttle that he's riding on?
Yeah, it was quite cool. This is the shuttle when they were entering into the planet with the guy.
Yeah,
with the top
that's
hat.
right.
Is that the one?
Yeah, he's like talking to that stranger across on the bench, and they're like flying in that train car. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. I'm not obviously as familiar with all the ships and model names and everything in the Star Wars universe, but at least I did definitely notice that one, and I especially love to see new kind of designs come in rather than rehashing old ones. So especially in live action. Yeah,
and a small kind of local shuttle like that, which is kind of described to what did I say his name was? Skarsgård's character, Luthen.
Oh, yeah.
It's described to him as kind of like a taxi or a shuttle by his ship droid mod thing. And
it's also described as very overpriced.
Yeah. Well, I thought to myself like it's cool that there's ships and stuff kind of being tailor-made to whatever culture kind of exists on that world, right? And this is a very much like a salvage planet, so it was just like, again, it's a small thing, but it's those small things that kind of make the galaxy, right? It's kind of what gives it. It's kind of what gives Star Wars the personality that we know and love, and what feels Star Wars, right? It's that grittiness. It's like the used aspect of it, like the old age of a lot of this stuff. The fact that it looks like a trolley, like a vintage trolley, but spacified and thrown in Star Wars, and it's like, it just, I don't know, there was just something about it. I was like, this really fits, like this works. And
I found it so funny too that he's writing it and the guy just like starts chatting with him.
Yeah, like you would on any train, right?
Time. Yeah, you're like you're on a city bus.
Yeah,
it's another example. Yeah, another example of invading personal space. We had the phone booth, and then we had this one.
Yeah,
right. Oh my gosh, you can tell right away because like whenever that happens to me, I'm like I just want to be left alone. You can kind of read that from Luthen's face.
Yeah, I'm in propulsion. What do you do for a living?
Right. Yeah, the guy, if you just don't answer, he'll just fill in the blanks for you and keep talking at you.
Yeah. I think we've all had a moment like that on public transit. The authorities arrive on Ferrix in a MIDI-LAT-looking gunship. Now, this is a new Lego set coming out this fall, which is, I don't know if it's already out yet or not, but it was revealed at Celebration. These are kind of cool little ships. They're actually smaller than I thought they would be, but they reminded me a lot
way
of
smaller.
Yeah, they reminded me a lot of Republic gunships. They were pretty cool in design though, very kind of triangular. They got the wings kind of.
It's got to be the same company.
Yeah,
like same manufacturer. I think
something like that. Yeah,
it seemed like the one we got in Clone Wars was like the full size dropship, and this must be like the smallest version you could get for just like local stuff.
I thought it was cool that they all kind of deploy from that giant, weird, triangular-looking structural ship that goes through hyperspace, and it's just like a drop ship that kind of goes out like an escape pod would, except it's like an actual drivable vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was cool too. Because at first I thought those were gun turrets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the ships took off.
Bix and Luthen clearly have talked about Cassian because they meet up on in the town, and Luthen is aware that the authorities are looking for Cassian, and he wishes to meet him anyways. And maybe I started to think to myself like, oh yeah, this is kind of what gave me the idea that Bix is probably part of a rebel cell. Or kind of, and doesn't really disclose that to anyone, even Andor. Like maybe Andor doesn't even know what he's doing when he's working for Bix. But I thought to myself, like, wow, they're quite familiar with each other. Like Luthen and Bix, like they kind of know each other. Like she knows already what he looked like because all she had to do was kind of see him, pay for her drink and just go over and start talking to him as they were kind of walking down the street. So, I thought to myself, like, okay, yeah, there's something else going on here. I feel like maybe we're going to see a lot more Bix despite the events of this third episode. I feel like she's going to kind of come up as a continuous character through this story of the earlier kind of rebellion. So, yeah, Luthen, that is a retractable cane as per the audio description. If anyone was wondering what that silver stick was that he was holding, it's not a toy lightsaber. It's a retractable cane.
Like cane sword.
Yeah.
Did he? I can't remember when he retracted it. Did he push it up against something, or did it all like retract on its own? Very specific detail, but
yeah,
it's quite cool.
You hit a button and it retracted, and then you put it in a pocket.
I want one.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking to myself, like, I don't know what it is with like human beings and like the need for like retractable toys and gear, but like it's just cool, like things that just kind of open and close by themselves. And
compact size for storage.
Yeah,
exactly. I think that like, and we mentioned the ship design before as well. I think one thing I wanted to say is how amazing the show looks. Like the sets look real, the universe looks expanded, and the best way, and I guess it's the way I described Dune when I watched Dune, is that it almost feels like you're watching a documentary, like they're filming events that kind of happened. I think there's so much detail that's gone into it, and everything looks lived in and not polished. So they've done a phenomenal job on the overall look of the film.
Yeah, thanks.
The TV show. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because it is worth noting for sure that this is the first Star Wars show that doesn't rely on the volume, the stagecraft technology that they designed for Mandalorian. Which has become very popular with a lot of shows these days. It's being used even by other companies, different variations of the same sort of tech on House of Dragon and other shows now. It's like it's just a huge it's just the next thing, right? It's just the next thing that's going to replace green screen.
It's a new green screen.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that Andor didn't use that as a backbone. I'm sure they used it maybe for some shots, but they made an effort of saying like, no, we actually built sets for this. This was approached as a giant movie that we just then diced up and kind of
Where
made a
was there an
series.
article or something about this?
Yeah, it was on.
Remember who
I
it
believe
was?
it was on the Vanity Fair Star Wars article that came out a while ago. But they've talked about it before. They talked about Andor being kind of the first big budget on set building sets kind of thing. And you know, there is a lot of visual effects in the environments and stuff, as there always is. But yeah, this is the first one that, and that, you know, to get back to what you said, Kirk, about like the scope of this show feels so much bigger because of that, right? I don't know about you, but like I just got a different feeling watching this show compared to Kenobi, Book of Boba, and Mandalorian. There's just something that feels different. You know, the shots that they're getting, the vastness of the
does.
environments. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the good examples for that, I remember looking at some early behind the scenes like leaks and photos of the sets, is that scene when the townspeople were running through, hitting all the metal bells and stuff to warn people. I think that entire set is completely to scale, like and real. And for me at least, it shows when they're filming it. So
That's amazing.
And I love the volume, and I love the Mandalorian. I think it's some of the best visually looking, you know, TV content that's come out in the last few years. But Andor definitely has a nice different feel to it, and a good kind of showcase of how people have the
Would you
teams
say
have
it's just more
went-
cinematic?
Yes, cinematic scope is
Yeah.
exactly how I would put it. Yeah.
Yeah, because to me,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
felt like I was watching like Rogue One or a
Yeah.
feature film.
Like an actual movie. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. In fact, I had the awesome like opportunity recently to go watch Rogue One in the IMAX like special release that they did
Oh, awesome.
a few weeks ago, and they showed a portion of Episode 3. So that scene with all the inside that where Luthen and Andor first meet with all the chains and everything.
Yeah.
That scene, and played Rogue One straight after that, and the movie, like the TV show scene and Rogue One, like they look identical, like they look like to par. So
That's
That's
that,
cool.
that was a good
They must have
indication
used
of-
that as
yeah.
a target then when they were working on it.
Yeah. It also is just like a good way to make that story feel continuous, right? Because I would imagine that this show is really targeting that Rogue One audience when it comes to the grittiness factor, the kind of spy espionage sort of aspect of Rogue One is very much, you know, a part of this story, and even more so. And you know, just the way that it's filmed, the way that the shots look like, you know, I kind of like, you know, I get the feeling that Rogue One is just kind of being wrapped up in the same bundle, and it's like they want to make it feel like it's the same, which is really, really good, you know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think Greg Fraser, which was like he was like the first DP for Rogue One, and also for some of the episodes in Mando season 1. I remember he was speaking about early on how they were almost about to start using the volume in Rogue One, but they then chose not to because it wasn't quite ready yet. Obviously, Mando filmed a couple of years later. So yeah, it was interesting how they chose the same kind of system not to rely on it in Andor, and that's what I guess visually how it looks fairly similar.
Yeah. Oh, that's it's a great way to make the show kind of feel familiar, which is you know, good way to connect it with Star Wars fans. So Andor, he uses a comm to contact B as the authorities. Actually, you know, before I get into that, Marva finds a young Andor on the crashed ship in the flashback sequence. She references the soldier on the Krenari kids shot down as a Republic officer. Did you guys catch that?
No.
So yeah, so when she finds
Missed it.
so Marva and her droid B in the flashback sequence, and her I don't know, business partner or husband or whoever he is, they go kind of salvaging scraps off the ship. You know, there's some expensive parts that they're after, but they find young Cassian Andor kind of on the ship, right? Doesn't speak a word of English. And they have a few words of exchange, like in that moment. And she references the soldier that the Krenari kids shot down as a Republic officer, which I thought was really weird, despite the Separatist uniform that he was wearing. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. It could be a continuity
There's
error.
a few weird
Who knows?
things about that, actually. It's like, how did they get on there to scavenge it so fast when it just crashed?
That's the thing. Like, I don't really know. So there's like a whole lot of questions built up around this thing. And the fact that she called a Separatist crew member a Republic officer, no idea what's going on there. But it's definitely confirming this is all Clone Wars based in the flashbacks, and
she also says that they need to rescue. If they don't take the kid, then does she not refer to it as the Republic? We'll just shoot.
They say
all the kids.
Yeah, so she says that we have to take him. They subdue him in efforts to basically save his life from the Republic, who has entered the atmosphere. And I assume that they're sending ships down to investigate the crashed Separatist ship, which is all the more reason why it's confusing that she called that dead flight crew member a Republic officer. So
maybe it's supposed to be Separatist.
Yeah, I think
in the script.
I think it was just a bad script terminology, maybe, for describing the guy. But yeah, it was just very confusing.
Maybe it's that being someone who's in the like the underworld, they don't really care, actually really know the difference between the two factions that are fighting. They consider both the Separatists and the actual Republic to be one of the same.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I feel like maybe some of these questions
are part of the Republic, right? They just like they're trying to separate.
Right. Yeah. So maybe we're seeing really early in Clone Wars, very, very kind of like early on. This is probably right after Battle of Geonosis, even maybe. Like, there's a chance that that's a possibility. I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like as the episodes go on, we'll kind of get our questions filled in, and when the season's over, we can kind of go back to the things that didn't make sense as just criticism for the next time that they have to do a season, and hopefully they don't get that stuff mixed up. But is
it possible that this is before Geonosis?
No, this is definitely after. This
Okay.
is definitely after Geonosis. It's got to be, because I mean, at least I'm just guessing, because I know that the Separatists were a thing before, but the Republic wouldn't have had military ships to shoot down Separatist ships prior to the clone army being revealed to the Jedi, which was at Geonosis. So my thoughts are that we did see clones in the trailer, so like I think we're going to get kind of pieces and bits through young Cassian Andor's life, and I don't know if it's all going to be a continuous day after day story, or if it's going to kind of just kind of segue us through. But I'm hoping that those questions are answered, and but yeah, there's always a slight possibility that could have been a script error. And Andor uses a comm to contact B. The authorities that raid his residence in Marva's house, they hear the message, track his signal to the warehouse where Luthen meets him, and he pushes for information from Andor about how he got the device that he's buying. But he's really more curious about Andor and his abilities as how he stole it. And I think it's like kind of apparent that he wants him to help him fight the Empire for real. And I really love the conversation. That whole sequence is the same sequence that you're talking about there, Kirk, the one that you guys watched before Rogue One. And, what did you guys think about this whole interaction between Andor and Luthen? And I don't know.
Do we have it clipped? Could we play it? Is it possible?
We have it clipped here. Let me just bring it up. All I could think about was how spies were recruited in real wartime, and it just kind of got me thinking, like how is that subject kind of breached? Like how would you approach someone not knowing if you can trust them or not, but also not really disclosing what you do for a living that would give away what you are, but also kind of poaching for information on whether or not you
subterfuge.
Yeah, like poaching for information, like how can I trust this person, or can't I trust this person, right? I got major kind of vibes of that, like watching those scenes, and I was like, oh, this is like really cool stuff.
And even so, like Luthen knew a lot about Andor as well, and Andor was like, hey, how do you know me? I took everything down off my profile, and he got a bit upset. So it was really really interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that he knows how he died, of his father's death. He said something in regards to
your dad was hung or something.
Yeah, he said his father was hung in some sort of like town square, like which I thought was really curious that he knows that information. And that's when he whips out the blaster and he goes like, "Who are you?" kind of thing. And, he's kind of freaked Andor out a little bit. But I've got some audio right here from that scene.
Telling you to die. Rings in the air, doesn't it?
Why don't you let me count that money?
Well, they'll think about it soon enough.
We should get moving.
Soon enough. I'll have something else to listen to.
You don't want to get caught with it.
Well, they'd hang me, wouldn't they? Take me out Bricks Road and hang me in the square. Wouldn't be the first time, would it? Isn't that where they hung your father?
Who are you? What is this?
I said I know you. I know all about you. Yes, I want the box, and I'll leave with that if it's all I can get. I came looking for something more, and I think I found it.
Yeah, really, really cool, like interesting conversation. Very cryptic, and I was digging it. It was very I was very invested in the scene. Yeah,
It's very spy, and I hope that's where it goes. I know we talked about that before the release here,
yeah.
and I do hope it becomes almost like a Jason Bourne-esque series. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice that the residents of the town were very responsive when the authorities show up? They're all clanging on metal bits and stuff. Like shopkeepers are closing down, and like Tang,
One guy
like
had,
they're
like,
like
a pot.
they're preparing for like the raid or whatever. Like I thought it was kind of interesting that they were all kind of like ready to act on, the corporate sector kind of coming in or corporate authority or whatever they call themselves. Yeah, it was
It's
just
almost
like,
like
wow.
their alarm. Like it reminded me of birds. If birds, maybe not all breeds, but I know there's some that if they sense danger. They see like a cat or something. They'll start squawking. Whichever ones are near where the cat is or the danger, they'll squawk so that everyone else knows where the danger is.
Yeah, it was interesting that the town kind of acts as like a unified group of people. Obviously, they all know and work together closely, and I guess that's what makes the betrayal of Tim all that more devastating.
Yeah.
Is because like they're all friends, they all kind of know each other, and even that kind of apparent shakedown that Andor gets in that back alley in the second or first episode by some friends of his who he owes money to, like it felt very weirdly friendly. In a strange way. And he's kind of surprised that they're trying to intimidate him, right? For what he owes. But
and he calls him out on it right away. So.
Yeah. So to me, I just got the idea that, it's a friendly town. Like, and Bix, even when she walks through the street, she's like nodding at people and,
it's a small town.
Yeah.
Everyone knows everybody, right?
Yeah. Small town. So obviously when the authorities come in to investigate one of their own, like they all kind of act on it. And I thought that was really interesting. Andor's friend Brasso, like he kind of chains down their ship, and which results in its destruction when the guy like pilots it into, the wall of a broken down Star Destroyer. And I was like, oh, that's so neat. Like just like the whole town kind of just like rebels against their.
Yeah, they come together.
Yeah, they come together, right? Which was pretty neat. And Marva, who's Andor's adoptive mother, is what the audio description kind of calls her out as, describes it to the officer who's kind of got her at gunpoint in the chair, as he just describes it as a reckoning, hence the name of the episode. And I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. And we see Tim get shot through the chest by a very trigger happy guard. So that's the end of him.
Yeah, man, I did not get that scene. I was actually that part probably it annoyed me. I say it was probably one of the things that I actually took issue with. So I get that he wanted to make amends because he got called out, right? By what's the lady's name?
Bix.
Bix by Bix, right? He got caught by her as the rat, and so Bix is basically being handcuffed by the police officers, and he decides his best bet is after they tell him to stay away is to run straight at them screaming, and they're obviously trigger happy. It's like, what did he think was gonna happen?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't make sense to me on any level that he would do that, basically.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna miss that character. I mean, I guess he served his purpose in trying to like motivate, the authorities after Cassian, but Yeah, I mean, he's a bit of a rat, so like,
And I mean, like, I don't mean any offense at all to anyone called Tim, but it's the most non-Star Wars name in the show. We've got like Luthen,
Tim.
we've got Andor, we've got like
Yeah.
obviously in Rogue One we have Saw Gerrera, and then Mon Mothma. Then we just got Tim.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, that's
Tim.
true.
Yeah.
They couldn't-
I think the only thing
He's
that's
the
Star
last
Wars
name.
about it is it's spelled with 2 M's. It's Tim.
Oh really?
Mr. Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Like you could argue that for Luke as well. It's just he's one of the first characters we ever met.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true,
yeah,
true.
But because Luke has the last name Skywalker, so you're like, oh, okay, see, then it works. But does Tim have a
Yeah.
last name to like try to
yeah.
Star Warsify him?
I'm surprised Luke isn't spelled like Luc or something like that. You know, just something that's non-conventional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know Clone Luke is spelled Luuke.
Oh, of course he is.
Luke. Right? It was just so you could tell the difference of who you're talking about on the paper, like on
Yeah.
the page.
Yeah. Cassian and Luthen, they have kind of a mad escape on the speeder. They get off world on Luthen's ship. Well, really cool design for a ship, by the way. Reminds me a lot of the, what's it
Yeah.
called? The Shadow something or another from Force Unleashed.
She's a shadowcaster.
No, sorry, that's the Rogue Shadow. Is it Rogue Shadow?
Yeah,
yeah,
that's it.
Rogue
That's it.
Shadow. Yeah, it kind of reminds me. I don't know, just the way that the cockpit's like designed and the aesthetics of like the ship with the panels and stuff sliding around. I don't know, just kind of reminded me a little bit about that ship. But yeah. Any Force Unleashed fans out there?
That whole escape scene with like the ship and that, like the decoy ship reminded me of episode 5 from Kenobi, where like Vader tries to grab the ship and then the other one flies off. So that's
Yeah.
kind of reminiscent of that, where they used the decoy. But yeah, wow, like that was such a tense scene for me. And watching like Cyril's reaction, where he just almost broke down crying from being happy. Like he started smiling first because
Yeah.
he was so relieved. He's like, "Yes, I did it. I'm a good leader.
Yeah.
This isn't that so bad." And he was happy that we got him. He looked up to his buddy, and that was like really like patriotic. And then when it blew up, and he's like, "Oh." And he turns to the camera and he's like borderline in tears and stuff.
Yeah.
After being, you know,
He got
his first day
duped.
in the field. Like it was, I think it was
He
like just
botched
such a,
it.
yeah. Like he said nothing. He said like no words at all. And I thought it was just great, I guess, filmmaking because no words at all. And he just so expressive in his face. And there's going to be, it's going to be really interesting where that character goes, especially when he has to report back to his boss. That
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. He's
now-
in deep trouble. Yeah.
How many of their guys died? Like,
Well, that's the thing,
way
right?
they were
Like,
a large crew.
it started as an investigation for the murder of 2 guards that were causing trouble, and then he takes like a fully innocent group of people, and like half of them are gone at this point. So,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like over 6 of them died at least. So, yeah, it was definitely a bit of a loss.
I hope he doesn't turn to the rebellion. Like he doesn't do a
Part of me thinks that's what's gonna happen.
I like what's that what's the squadron called in Battlefront 2? The new Battlefront 2, the Death Squad.
Yeah, Inferno Squad.
Inferno Squad, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, how they turned to the well, at least most of them apart from Husk, I think his name was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope he remains a bit salty and on, you know.
I'll go one step further and suggest that his motive to just pursue
Justice.
in the way that he does, and just kind of like has a very, I don't know, a very brash kind of personality, like bossing around all his like, you know, what do you call those subordinates?
He has no patience.
Yeah, he's got no patience and stuff. I'm gonna suggest that maybe at some point he'll kind of join the Empire, because he's just kind of one of those people that looks and feels like he could be an Imperial officer.
The thing is, he botched it, right? So because he's screwed up, I feel like he won't be able to.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing, right? And I do know that season 2, they have said that it's going to be a time jump. So maybe what we're going to see is more of like story from him, where maybe he gets fired or something. You know, he doesn't know what to do with his life, goes and signs up with the Imperial military, but he kind of always has like a thing for Andor and decides that he's going to spend his like whole career kind of going after the guy or whatever who ruined his life by, holding him responsible essentially for the failure that he had on leading that pursuit of justice sort of thing. But I guess we'll find out. But that's just kind of my estimate. I'm just going to take a guess at that. But
yeah. I think he's a really interesting character, and I feel like we're going to see a lot more of him over the next 12 episodes, which means there's a lot more stuff, going to happen.
Yeah. Well, that being said, I guess we'll wrap things up here. And you guys have any last minute things to bring up?
Well, I hope we see Krennic. That's about it.
Oh, that'd be neat. We brought in some Death Star stuff.
That would be cool.
I just really want a lot of espionage. I think that'd be super cool.
Yeah. I'm hoping we get some good information. I can't wait until we see Mon Mothma, and Saw Gerrera. I'm really excited to see what kind of part they play in this show, because like we do know that they both have appearances in the show. So I'm excited how they cross paths with Andor and how this is all kind of going to make sense in the end. Also very much looking forward to the Clone Troopers scenes, like those flashbacks in Clone Wars. That's going to be really cool as well. So
I hope that's a big scene, not just a blink and you miss it cameo.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I really hope that I was kind of hoping that they would like linger like a whole episode, just like, let's see the backstory of this like youthful character and whatever. But
yeah,
I don't know.
But it's going to be a flashback, right?
Yeah, it's flashback. So I don't know. It's like you said, it's the second show to do it. Hopefully they don't get into the habit of doing that, because, Star Wars is already very jumping around all over the place anyway. So it's like, it's nice just to sit down and watch a story that's like, yeah, this takes place then. Yeah. Anyways, Kirk, thanks so much for joining us, man. It was great to have you on again. And Blake, we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. We'll see you out there. Keep flying.
All right, and to our lovely audience, thank you for sticking with us today, reviewing the first 3 episodes of Andor. We'll be back every week to chat about the new episodes coming out on Disney Plus. There's a whole schedule released on the Twitter, on the official Star Wars news sites. Of course, you want to join the Discord. You're not going to miss a thing there. Definitely go check out the Orbitkey site. URL is www.orbitkey.com/collections/star-wars. You can get all of the Star Wars products on there. I believe I got that all right, but definitely check out those desk mats, and we're going to see you all in the next one. May the Force be with you.